Glenn Beck is going on the road for his Elegant Eliminations Tour. Find out what that means and ask Glenn questions about anything. And watch him sweat as he's forced to answer live on stage. Which has nothing to do with the question. He just sweats a lot. Get all the details at glennbecktours.com.
Let me go to Paul Ryan.
Yes, he will be with us in just a second. Paul Ryan.
Let me to him in just a minute. When
He's
after
calling
we
in.
have, there he is, Paul Ryan. You sir,
How you doing?
I love you.
Oh, I love you too.
I have been waiting for when Congress was going back and forth with, well, should it be 60 billion or 40 billion?
Right.
I was losing my mind. We were talking about the trillions, and here you come riding in on your white horse to give us a plan that has a chance of saving our country. Thank you for that, sir.
You're welcome. It's what I owe you, my children, my constituents. We owe this to our country. Look, our whole budget committee, half of which are new freshmen, we decided, look, we're just going to fix this. We're going to go after these programs, after these drivers of our debt. And, we rolled up our sleeves and worked for the last few months, and working with the CBO and all these other actuaries to put in place a plan that cuts $6.2 trillion out of the Obama budget over the next 10 years and gets this debt on a path to actually be paid off.
Okay. Did you take on the wasteful spending in the Defense Department, too? Because that's my...
We took $178 billion out of waste, put $100 into the troops and $78 into deficit reduction.
Over 10 years?
Yes.
Okay. You can do better than that, Paul. But
the 78 actually is in the first 5 years.
All right. Okay. All right. So tell me how this works exactly. What are the highlights that people need to understand?
Well, first of all, you can go to the House Budget Committee website if you want to get the whole thing. You can download, the 62-page budget report. There's some summaries as well. We're going after corporate welfare, which means privatizing Fannie and Freddie, getting rid of Dodd-Frank and all the bailout funds, going after all the energy green pork.
Okay, hold on just a second. Wait.
Yeah.
Let's stop at Fannie and Freddie here for a second. That is a huge sinkhole and corruption beyond, I believe, most Americans' wildest understanding.
It's the poster child for what I call crony capitalism or corporate welfare, if you will.
Yes.
And so we have a whole portion of this budget devoted to going after corporate welfare.
Okay. Now, how much will that affect? What I want to do is, I'm tired, Paul, of politicians suggesting things, whether it be a lot more spending or a big, huge cuts, and they don't explain what this means to the average person's life. When you go in and you just shut down Freddie and Fannie, they, I believe, they now have control of almost 100% of every new loan that has been written last year.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
So what it means is we want to get the government out of this business. And
hello? We've lost him. We've lost Paul Ryan.
Oh, no.
Those are words I never, ever want to hear.
Yeah.
Could we get him back on? He's obviously on a
just a cell thing.
Yeah, he's only got a few more minutes, so we have plenty of time, hopefully.
I tell you what, why don't I break then real early?
I don't think you need to, actually.
You're going to get him back on?
Let's see if we can just get him back on, because his window's a little short. He has it's a big day for him, and this is the day that he released this budget. I mean, this is the day. This is one of the first interviews he's doing about it.
And look at it. Have we talked about the fact that this eliminates roughly $800 billion in tax increases?
Yeah, we've got to get to the taxes.
This is 25
That's amazing.
areas. Paul, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about that. I'm in the middle of Washington, D.C., but my cell just shut down on me. Apologize.
Oh, that's not a problem. It's George Soros. Anyway, you were just saying quickly on Fannie and Freddie what it'll mean.
So it means we're going to get the private sector to do the secondary mortgage market, not the government. We're going to put private capital at risk for securing mortgages, not taxpayer capital. But we go way beyond this. We are addressing farm programs, getting rid of, fixing the direct payment program. We're talking about shrinking the federal workforce by 10% over the next 3 years through attrition, pay freezes in the federal workforce. We're talking about cutting discretionary spending on government agencies below 2008 levels. We're talking about entitlement reform, block granting Medicaid to the states, doing welfare reform 2.0, which is food stamps, housing programs. Those did not get reformed like the rest of welfare in the 1990s. We want to finish with reform now so they work. Food stamps has grown fourfold. We're reducing that. We're sending it back to the states, and we're having time limits and work requirements so we can get people into a system where they don't become complacent and dependent upon government, but they get up on their lives and in their lives of sufficiency. So we're doing so many different things, which, yes, saves trillions of dollars, 6.2 over the 10-year window in particular, but limits the size of the federal government. This budget brings the government back down to and below its historic size, which is contrary to where President Obama has taken the country to historic highs and much, much higher.
That will then undo the things that Cass Sunstein has done to regulate people so they just can't do anything.
Yeah, I read Nudge, too.
I love you.
This is not the role of federal government. We want to get the government out of the role of picking winners and losers, out of the role of trying to micromanage the economy, and back toward its traditional constitutional role, which is to protect our natural rights, to set the stage so that we can go out and define happiness and secure it for ourselves as we define happiness, so long as we're not taking it away from somebody else. So that's the plan. We're also doing tax reform, which is we don't see the tax code as a tool of social engineering or wealth redistribution. We see it as something that's necessary to fund the government's constitutional purposes, and therefore we're proposing fundamental tax reform where we clean up all the loopholes and stuff like that and bring the tax rates down to 25% for individuals and corporations so we can get economic growth. Heritage Foundation gave us a great estimates that shows this plan, with its spending cuts, debt reduction, and tax reform, kicks out about 1 million new jobs next year alone, brings unemployment rate down to 4% by 2015.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's producing about 2.5 million new jobs by the end of the decade, $1,000 in extra family income because of better economic growth a year, and $1.1 trillion in higher wages and $1.5 trillion in faster economic growth, according to the Heritage Foundation's analysis of our plan.
But, Paul, the left is going to bludgeon you to death with this. They're going to say that it's the same old stuff. You're offering tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, blah, blah, blah. You're taking money out of the mouths of children. They're going to hit you with all that stuff, that we can't afford this and that this is reckless and extreme. How are you going to combat that?
You're from Wisconsin. They're killing.
We're used to this.
Yeah. I mean, how are you going to combat it?
So you guys will really have to be out there in the face of the American people talking about this, which Republicans traditionally have not done well.
I think the country is ahead of the political class up here in Washington. I think they're ready to be spoken to like adults. They want that honest conversation. We will have a debt crisis if we keep kicking the can down the road. The debt literally will get out of our own control by just interest payments in and of itself.
What do you think? Go ahead. What do you think is going to happen now? All of a sudden, they haven't done a budget since 2009. All of a sudden, they've got to have one now. The Democrats want a shutdown and want a crisis. I don't know if you saw our reporting from theblaze.com on the SEIU chief organizer that is plotting what I believe any Justice Department other than this one would say is economic terrorist. And Jason Chaffetz says it's economic terrorism as well, and several other people in Congress have. They need a crisis, and they're going to cause one. Do you believe that you'll get to a real budget here with them to be able to stop the closure of the government and raise the debt ceiling, or not?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question, because if you look at their actions, they don't seem to be wanting to negotiating in earnest. We will pass our third bill today preventing a shutdown and getting spending cuts. The Senate's never passed one. So if you just look at their actions, and if you look at the way they're more or less not negotiating, it leads you to that conclusion, that they would prefer to see a shutdown in which they think they can, cast the blame on Republicans.
What does that mean to the average American? A shutdown and the not raising the debt ceiling. What do those two things mean?
The one thing we want to make sure it doesn't mean is that the troops get paid. I mean, we literally, troops and people don't get paid during that time, and we don't want to see that happen, especially, families of soldiers who are out there fighting, living paycheck to paycheck. Now, the default option is a wholly different scenario. If you think government shutdown's an ugly scenario, wait until the debt limit is pierced. Look, we don't want to just rubber stamp some ridiculous increase in the debt limit. We want to get serious cuts and controls in combination with that. But if we do go to a brinksmanship and we run out of all the different things Treasury can do to buy time, and you actually would have a default, then the currency crashes, then the interest rates spike, then you have an economic crisis on your hands. And the last thing I want to see happen is a debt crisis with President Obama in office. Look, bond traders are telling us we have 2 to 5 years of the general time frame I hear where our debt gets so bad that the credit markets turn on us. We are putting out a budget today that preempts that from happening. The debt hits 74.5% of GDP in 2014 and goes down from there. Under the path that Obama's put us on, it goes to about 90, then 100%, and then way on up from there. So we are preempting a debt crisis with this budget, but if we can't get things like this passed, then we will have a debt crisis, and
so
God knows only what's going to happen under that kind of a situation.
What does the average person do? Paul, I have to tell you, I talk about this. I talk about the corruption and you're from Wisconsin. You know who's involved with these unions. They are communists, socialists, and revolutionaries. It is a totally different scenario. And you just can't talk to people. And people are tired of, I'm going to go stand out and do something. They want to make a difference. So what is it that you think will truly make a difference that the American people can do that will shut these union revolutionaries down?
Well, ultimately, we got to win elections. And the way I look at it, with this budget we're putting out, we call it a path to prosperity, we are giving the country the choice they deserve to have. Look, if we don't do this and offer an alternative plan based on founding principles, then the path we're on. We go to becoming a cradle-to-grave welfare state. The size and scope of the federal government will be unrecognizable if we stay on our current path. So yes, the left is in the perch of the position of all they have to do is stop us from reforming government, and they get the growth of government, they get the size of government that a lot of people want on that side of the aisle. Now, what we owe the country is to offer them a choice of a different future.
Right.
Offer them a government, a plan that gets back toward our original purpose, that has an opportunity society with a safety net and a free, prosperous society based upon limited government and economic freedom. That is the plan we're putting out. So we are giving the country at least the ability to choose their future instead of simply going down this perilous path we are on. And so as I see it, as this sitting member of Congress, it's my job to give the country a choice so the country can choose. And I personally believe in the center-right country we are today, they'll make the right choice. We just have to give them that choice. And yes, that takes elections.
All right, I've only got 2 minutes, and I have 2 questions. So let me give them to you, and then you can go real quick. First one.
Okay.
The election today, huge in Wisconsin. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen?
It's going to be tight. I mean, Dave Foster's a friend of mine. He's a great judge, proven conservative, but the unions have just really mobilized millions of dollars. They got a lot of people in there in Wisconsin. You know, it's a low turnout election, and in low turnout elections, unions have, a disproportionate amount of influence. And so I'm worried about the race. I just got to tell you that.
Okay. Second thing is, why, if you are so serious, and we are to believe that you represent a coalition of Republicans, why were we having the discussion here between $30 billion and $60 billion? Why should we believe that any Republican is really, truly serious?
Well, that is the reason we're having that 30 to 60 billion is because the Democrats didn't pass the budget last year. They didn't pay the bills, and so now we're trying to mop up last year's mess. We are running Congress the way it was supposed to be run, which is you put your budget out by April 15th. Well, that's what we're doing. We're putting our budget out, which is for next year and the next 10 years, and that's what we're talking about, going after trillions of dollars of savings.
Paul Ryan, thank the Lord for you. I appreciate it, and we will talk to you again. Thank you for your hard work.
Take care.
God bless. Back in a minute.